Studios. This is the award-winning Eyewitness News.
Tropical Storm Isaac spawns a tornado that ripped through a small section of Florida's east coast near Vero Beach. This video shows how it tore through one mobile home community and destroyed several of them. And near Fort Lauderdale, parts of the Sawgrass Expressway were closed today due to rising waters, snarling rush hour traffic. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Angelica Alvarez. Tropical Storm Isaac is slowly making its way through the Gulf of Mexico, and several states, including Florida, could feel the impact. Let's get right to the latest on the storm with Chief Meteorologist Mike McCall in the Pinpoint Weather Center. Mike?
Thanks very much, Angelica. And I could try to spin it some way, but as far as our local weather is concerned, Isaac has so far kind of been a dud, except for the fact that we have had some gusty winds down toward the coast, some high surf, and still could have some minor coastal flooding. But as far as producing anything significant inland with wind or rain, no, just hasn't happened. Now, addressed this earlier today with one of the big reasons for that. Well, there are a couple, but the big reason, this dry air that got sucked up from the northwestern Caribbean and has come around the eastern side of this. Now, there was one impressive feeder band. You mentioned the tornado. This feeder band that lined up along the east coast of Florida was very impressive. Produced some tornadoes, produced some torrential rainfall. Had that been on the west coast, it would have been a completely different story. So it's that narrow part of the peninsula that changed everything for us, and I'm personally glad that we stayed on the dry side of things so far. Now, as far as the intensification, well, I'll tell you what, Isaac just keeps trying, but this dry air just keeps wrapping into the center, and it just can't get its act together. Pressure dropped for a while, and then it leveled off. So it is still a tropical storm. And now, forecast to only become a Category 1, backed off on the intensity because I think at this point, the National Hurricane Center just kind of went like this and said, you know what, it's not going to become a strong hurricane because it hasn't done it by now. It may not happen. Still moving northwest at 10 miles per hour. Now we'll talk about what could still happen locally as far as the impacts go coming up in just a few minutes. Angelica?
All right, thank you, Mike. Well, residents along our coast are preparing for Isaac. Many people in Franklin County spent the weekend and today at supply stores. Businesses such as Taylor's Building Supply stayed open during hours when it's normally closed. The mandatory evacuation in the county has people leaving St. George Island, but many are choosing to stay. One man even flew in from Atlanta to help his family get ready.
We didn't know how bad it was going to be, so we decided I was going to come down and help him and help board up.
Residents tell us they're mostly concerned about storm surge and flooding. With Isaac on a direct path for New Orleans, President Obama has declared a state of emergency in Louisiana. The storm is expected to be a hurricane when it hits late tomorrow or early Wednesday, 7 years after Hurricane Katrina hit. Drew Levinson has more from New Orleans.
Thousands in Louisiana are boarding up their homes and getting out of town.
We lost almost everything for Katrina, so we are not taking any chances.
The airport in New Orleans canceled all flights for Tuesday. About 53,000 people in low-lying areas around the city are being told to evacuate.
If your plan for an event like this was to leave, now is the time to leave.
Isaac is moving through the warm waters of the Gulf and is picking up strength. It could be a Category 2 hurricane when it hits the coast and is expected to drop more than 1.5 feet of rain in some places.
The coastal flooding is going to be a problem as well. That area of the coastline, we know it from past storms, from Louisiana all the way to the Florida Panhandle, very vulnerable to storm surge.
Isaac is bearing down on the Gulf Coast as this area prepares for the 7-year anniversary of Katrina on Wednesday. About 1,800 people died after the levee system failed, flooding neighborhoods around New Orleans. After Katrina hit, this area where I'm standing was under more than 20 feet of water. Since then, the Army Corps of Engineers spent $14 billion to build bigger, stronger levees and walls, just like this one. New Orleans is now protected by 133 miles of new levees and flood walls. Many people outside the levee system are being told to evacuate. Bruce Harris lives inside the walls and is staying.
Before Katrina, we were real vulnerable. Now we're not, because of all the levees and improvements that they've made.
Harris believes those improvements will keep him safe during the storm. Drew Levinson, CBS News, New Orleans.
A state of emergency has also been declared in Mississippi and in Alabama. About 8,000 people on Alabama's coast were told to evacuate. And as the storm makes its way to land, thousands of volunteers are flooding Florida and other Gulf Coast states to help. But what happens when it's the Red Cross workers who need the help? Eyewitness News reporter James Buckley tells us how two very special volunteers are in charge of keeping the other ones on the go. James?
Thanks, Angelica. Yeah, the Red Cross donates food, supplies, among other things in their mobile units, but someone has to make sure those vehicles are up to code. That's where Eugene Harper and Dolan Collins come into play. Dolan Collins is from Nebraska and Eugene Harper is from South Carolina. The two are driving to where others are leaving. They make sure the fleet of vehicles traveling across the country for the Red Cross are in working order and able to get help to those in need.
When they get there, usually there's tires bad or batteries or front end alignment. We don't like to see disasters, but if it happens, we want to be there to give them a shoulder to lay on and keep these trucks running.
We have door stops.
It's a mini body shop inside with everything you could think of to fix vehicles. It also helps that Harper runs his own body shop in South Carolina.
Knowing that I had a little mechanical background, I decided this was something I'd enjoy doing.
Between Dolan and Eugene, they have more than 14 years experience working for the Red Cross, and they've been all across the country, from Colorado to New York and Florida to Texas. Even though these two don't meet storm victims face to face, they're just happy they can help in the road to recovery.
They know that you're there to help, and that's what we're for.
Now, the Red Cross will not deploy the vehicles from Tallahassee until Isaac makes landfall. Now, I asked Collins what's the first thing he does when he arrives anywhere for a disaster. He says he buys a map because every place they go has a new set of roads and streets to learn. Live in studio, James Buckley, WCTV Eyewitness News.
Thank you, James. As Florida prepares for the storm, South Georgia is also getting ready. Authorities want you to know about an emergency alert system called Code Red. You can sign up for it and get text alerts, even a phone call about any weather emergencies in your area. Authorities also want to remind you to only call 911 if you feel that your safety is in jeopardy. They say the 911 call volume can double during severe weather times, which can often slow response time. The storm has already forced a number of schools to close tomorrow. All Taylor, Franklin, and Jefferson County schools are slated to close, including Our Blessings Early Learning Center in Jefferson County. Wakulla County schools will be open tomorrow. WCTV is working around the clock to keep you updated on Tropical Storm Isaac and closures in our area. You can watch us on the air, follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, and of course you can always go to our website, WCTV.tv, for all your updates. While there was worry that it might, Isaac did not stop the Republican Party from opening its political convention in Tampa, but it did shorten it by a day. CBS's Danielle Nottingham has the latest on the day's events and what's happening tomorrow in Tampa.
The first day of the 2012 Republican National Convention officially lasted 32 seconds.
The 2012 Republican National Convention stands in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
Fears that severe weather would cause problems forced planners to scrap Monday's schedule. Several hundred delegates attended the brief opening session. Notably absent, most delegations from Gulf states, still in Isaac's path.
It will overshadow what's going on here, but when you have something that dangerous going on, it probably should overshadow this.
The opening gavel also started a new debt clock. The GOP is tracking how much the national debt rises during the convention. Mitt Romney will officially receive the nomination Tuesday evening. He'll be the choice of the party, but not of every Republican here. Mike Wallace of Maine supports Ron Paul. Do you feel like you are welcome here?
No, I don't feel welcome here. I think there's a lot of just negative energy that's directed at delegations like Maine that are apparent that they're not going to just fall in line.
Romney's running mate, Congressman Paul Ryan, enjoyed an enthusiastic send-off from a hometown crowd in Janesville, Wisconsin. He said Romney turned around failing businesses, and he will turn around the country.
When people are successful in business, that's a good thing. That is not something to resent.
Ryan is set to address the convention on Wednesday. Danielle Nottingham, CBS News, Tampa, Florida.
Former Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and Ann Romney are all scheduled to speak tomorrow night. Many college students headed back to class today, and fewer are starting this fall semester without scholarships. We'll tell you why later on, but first, here's Mike McCall with a preview of your forecast. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Angelica. And as you heard at the top of the show, Isaac's still a tropical storm trying to get stronger out in the Gulf, but if it doesn't, that's fine with me. But we'll still talk about the possible impacts. We'll have that forecast coming up.
And coming up in sports, the depth chart for the Florida State football team is out for game number 1 against Murray State, and the starting quarterback position for the Florida Gators is still undecided. Find out what the Gators plan to do on Saturday.
Eyewitness News.
All this rain has left one community wading in the water. This is video out of Woodville in Leon County. Residents in 2 neighborhoods say this happens all the time when we see a lot of rain, and we have. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Angelica Alvarez. Leon County leaders say they plan to address the flooding issues in Woodville, but for now, that standing water, as we've reported before, is just a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Nationwide, cases of West Nile virus are on the rise, and the government says this could be the worst year the U.S. has ever seen. Now, the Centers for Disease Control is sounding the alarm. CBS's Manuel Gallegos reports.
Federal health officials say the number of cases of mosquito-borne West Nile virus jumped 60% last week. So far this year, cases have been reported in 47 states. More than 1,100 people have been infected, and at least 41 have died.
This year looks like the biggest year in years, and we're only starting the major West Nile season.
Most of the cases are in Texas, which is also enduring a severe drought. Experts say that could be fueling the outbreak.
The drought means that there are very few water sources available. That's where the mosquitoes breed, and then the birds which carry the virus go to those water sources. The mosquitoes bite them, they're infected, and then the mosquitoes bite us.
About 1 in 150 patients infected with the virus becomes seriously ill.
60 to 70% of those individuals are going to have long-term effects such as paralysis, memory loss.
John Shaw was infected 7 years ago. He hasn't been the same since.
A couple of days later, I was getting dressed and I was putting on my shorts and I just collapsed.
The city of Dallas is among several nationwide that have sprayed insecticide to try to protect its citizens. But individuals are warned not to stop there.
Use insect repellent freely and often, particularly early in the morning and in the evening.
And consult your doctor if you have flu-like symptoms with neck pain. Manuel Gallegos, CBS News.
While people of any age can become infected with the West Nile virus, it is the elderly who are considered the most vulnerable to the most serious of complications. Now in our area, Leon and Jefferson counties are both currently under a West Nile advisory. Earlier in the week, we told you a 53-year-old Tallahassee man became the first human infected with the virus in Leon County this year. The man has since been released from the hospital. We're told he is improving. West Nile symptoms usually don't appear until 5 to 15 days after you're bitten by an infected mosquito. Symptoms may include severe headaches, fever, nausea, vomiting, disorientation, chills, muscle aches, pain, and stiffness. Now, there is no treatment for the virus. West Nile is not contagious through casual contact with a person who is infected.
Well, absolutely, we're prepared to call it off. I mean, human safety and human life trumps politics.
That was the mayor of Tampa answering a question about what would happen if Tropical Storm Isaac hits during the upcoming Republican National Convention. Now that convention starts on Monday. Troy Kinsey was at the State Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee, where a potential evacuation plan is very much on the table.
It's a week of pomp and circumstance, years in the making, but a very unwelcome guest named Isaac could bring the GOP convention to a halt. If the storm becomes a hurricane and takes aim at Tampa, Mayor Bob Buckhorn isn't ruling out ordering an evacuation.
The Emergency Operations Center is already stood up because of the RNC. So all we would have to do is transition from putting on a major political event to an evacuation mode.
And just like that, the worst-case scenario that led many Republican officials to think twice about holding their convention in Florida during hurricane season would come to pass. For all the unpredictability of the tropics, this scenario is all too familiar for the folks here at the State Emergency Operations Center. As hurricane season kicked off, so too did a drill focused on an unscripted event during the GOP convention.
A major landfall.
It was a fictional hurricane with a track that looks a lot like the one Isaac is taking now. In the drill, the convention was called off and mass evacuations ensued. But Florida Emergency Management Director Brian Kuhn points out the fake hurricane was a Category 3. Isaac doesn't look to be anywhere near as powerful.
This is right now forecast to be a hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, and so we don't believe it would have the same effects. However, going through the practice for a larger event helps you when it comes to dealing with a smaller event because you can always scale down your responses.
Just what a scaled-down response might look like, Kuhn isn't letting on, but like everyone else, he's hoping Isaac won't become a grand old party pooper. Troy Kinsey, WCTV Eyewitness News, Tallahassee.
Kuhn says his team in Tallahassee is playing a supporting role in managing the response to Isaac. In the end, the only officials with the power to order evacuations are on the local level. In the case of the RNC, that would mean Mayor Buckborn along with the Hillsborough County Commission. An administrative law judge says a Florida teacher evaluation rule is invalid. The judge found that the State Board of Education and Florida Department of Education failed to follow rulemaking procedures. The Florida Education Association challenged the rule designed to implement evaluation criteria required by a new state law that was passed last year. State education officials must begin the rulemaking process from scratch, or they can ask the First District Court of Appeal to overrule the judge. Union leaders say the decision does not invalidate other evaluation systems approved by the state in connection with a $700 million federal grant to the TOP grant. Falsifying a domestic violence complaint, seizing children from a home without a warrant, setting up a false sexual harassment complaint. These are claims all being made against members of the Wakulla County Sheriff's command staff. Eyewitness News reporter Jackie Slater takes a closer look.
Stephen Gainey used to be a captain with the Wakulla County Sheriff's Office. However, he took early retirement in June after he claims he was demoted to lieutenant without cause. He says that demotion was just the beginning of his troubles. In this letter dated August 13th, his attorney claims Major Shepard Bruner and Lieutenant Billy Jones took his children from his home without benefit of any court order. The letter goes on to claim Major Bruner helped Gainey's wife file a petition for a domestic violence order he knew was false. Gainey's attorney also claims witnesses overheard Major Bruner planning to have Mr. Gainey set up for investigation on a bogus sexual harassment complaint. Attorney Marie Maddox tells us the letter is in advance of a lawsuit she plans to file against the sheriff's office within the next 6 months.
Again, that was Jackie Slater reporting. Sheriff Donnie Crum declined to comment on that letter due to the pending lawsuit. Now, why would members of his command staff knowingly falsify documents and seize children without a warrant? Well, according to Gainey's attorney, his wife is a relative of Sheriff Crum and a friend of Major Brunner. A Leon County man accused of killing a man after a wedding reception has been indicted today for first-degree murder. Darren Black is accused of shooting and killing 35-year-old Michael Carr. Deputies say the two men got into an argument at a wedding reception last month. A confrontation then followed at a friend's house in Miccosukee later that night. Deputies say Black shot Carr in the front yard. A trial date has not yet been set. Thomas Barton was also indicted this afternoon for the murder of 31-year-old James Burke. Deputies say Barton shot Burke in front of his mother in their home on Wren Drive last month. Deputies say the mother and son were arguing when Barton grabbed a shotgun from a bedroom and killed Burke. Barton was indicted for first-degree murder this afternoon. A man accused of robbing a restaurant has been caught. 27-year-old Clifton Chavers is accused of robbing a Subway at gunpoint. On Tuesday night, the Quincy Police Department received a tip about Chavers' whereabouts. Officers then arrested him around 11:30. Chavers has been charged with robbery with a firearm, false imprisonment, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He's being held at the Gadsden County Jail. This week jumpstarts early voting that could allow hard liquor sales in one local county. A special election could make Madison County a wet county or keep things the same. The campaign has been up and running for almost a year now. Proponents believe allowing the sale of alcohol will give businesses a boost. The main opponents to the alcohol referendum have mostly been church groups. Madison County is not completely dry. Stores can sell drinks that have up to 6% alcohol content. If the referendum passes, it'll change that limit. Early voting for the referendum runs through Friday. The special election is scheduled for Tuesday on the 28th. Controversial comments made by Missouri Representative Todd Akin landed him in hot water with his party. When Eyewitness News returns, we'll tell you why the embattled Republican is once again at odds with members of his own party. But first, a check on your forecast with meteorologist Mike McCall. Hey there, Mike.
Hi, Angelica, and nice to see you. We still had some summer showers as we had almost every day in August across the region. Of course, I'll talk about that, and of course, I'll talk about Tropical Storm Isaac. The very latest information coming up in just a few minutes.
And still to come in sports, as training camp comes to a close, Florida State and FAMU are set to hold their second scrimmages of the preseason. And one local pitcher will have an extended summer vacation, I should say. I'll tell you why ahead in sports.
Good evening. Here is a live look at Capitol Circle Northeast and I-10 from our tower cam here at WCTV. It looks a lot drier now than most of our Monday. Now let's take a look at video of parts of Old Woodville Highway just south of Tallahassee. It rained so much, some roads were closed temporarily due to all that flooding. Look at that. Some parts of southern Leon County received up to 3 inches of rain. And all the rain certainly did not help road conditions. This accident happened just after 4 this evening, almost right in front of the Florida Capitol on Appalachian Parkway. It involved several cars and took out a light pole, but thankfully, no one was seriously injured. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Angelica Alvarez. Meteorologist Mike McCall will tell us if we can expect more of the same tomorrow later in our newscast. But first, let's talk politics. For more than 15 years, Florida's legislature has been firmly in the grip of Republicans. The party has a supermajority. That means it holds so many seats in the House and Senate that Republican leaders can limit debate. While Democrats don't have much chance of taking control, erasing the GOP supermajority is a different story. Troy Kinsey explains.
For politicians who have built their careers on being long-winded, it's a bit of a problem.
The clerk will start the debate clock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
If there's a controversial bill up for debate, chances are good there will be a time limit, a rule Tallahassee's Republican leaders aren't shy about invoking on every issue from election reform to abortion.
Although this chamber seems to want to control it, they don't seem to really want a rational discussion about it.
The ticking clock, along with the right to fast-track legislation, is a luxury you get when you have a supermajority. Republicans hold more than 2/3 of all the seats in the House and Senate, giving them extraordinary power to push through their agenda. But with Florida's political map looking more competitive in November, political consultant Kevin Cade is predicting the GOP supermajority is about to be wiped out.
I don't think anyone believes that the Democrats are going to come into power through this next election at the state level. What's going to happen if you don't have a supermajority, then all of a sudden the Tea Party agenda doesn't become paramount, and Democrats and Republicans can start to work together again.
Without you, politicians just get to work for themselves.
That's why we're standing together.
Cade's put together this ad for the Florida Democratic Party, a key part of an aggressive campaign to win back anywhere from 4 to 8 legislative seats. In politics, almost nothing is permanent, not least of all a supermajority. Florida's changing demographics combined with redistricting are giving Democrats a prime opportunity to mount a comeback, but for their part, Republicans aren't blinking. At least not in the Senate, where GOP strategist Pete Dunbar is optimistic about his party's chances. The supermajority could hinge on the outcome of 2 races, one in southeast Florida, the other near Daytona Beach.
You can pretty much dictate where the voting majorities are going to deliver, both for the Democrats and the Republicans. And we have 2 very, I think, hotly contested sort of independent seats where it can go either way, and it will all come down to those 2 seats, in my opinion.
In this case, the old phrase, all politics is local, could never be more true. What politicians are allowed to do here depends on what the voters do there. Troy Kinsey, WCTV Eyewitness News, Tallahassee.
Republicans captured their supermajority just 2 years ago on the wave of a massive turnout by voters aligned with the Tea Party. It was a well-kept secret until today. Tonight, we're getting our first look at the stage for the Republican National Convention, which starts 1 week from today in Tampa. The RNC committee chairman helped with this big reveal. The high-tech stage has 13 LED panels, creating a backdrop with video capabilities. Republicans hope will help them connect with the voters. The stage inside the Tampa Bay Times Forum took 30,000 hours to design and build. It's been a while, about 4 decades, but the Sunshine State is no stranger to national political conventions. 40 years ago, Miami Beach hosted both Democrats and Republicans, something that hasn't happened since. The Miami Beach Convention Center was host to Republicans the last time they held a convention. During that convention, Republicans nominated Richard Nixon and Spiro Agnew for second terms. Some of our area's top business and community leaders were polled about their views on local and national issues. That poll was at the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce Annual Community Conference in Sandestin earlier this month. 51% believe Florida is headed in the right direction. Just under half, at 49%, say it's headed the other way. And when asked who they support for president, 63% plan to vote for Mitt Romney and 32% say President Obama. Longtime state attorney Robert Skip Jarvis will be bowing out of the race for re-election. Right now, he's the state attorney for the 3rd Judicial Circuit. That decision to withdraw comes after an investigation into claims that he misused government crime database computers to get personal information to use against his opponents. State Attorney Brad King says attorneys appointed to seek an indictment against Jarvis agreed to drop the case against him in exchange for his withdrawal from the upcoming election. State employees can get money for sick and vacation time, but that they don't use, but that could soon change. Florida has a liability of more than $690 million owed to state employees, whether they use that time or not. Now some state reps want to shave that down. This leads us to tonight's Voice Your Choice poll question results. Earlier today, we asked, do you think lawmakers should be able to cut unused vacation time for state workers? 8% of you say yes, and 92% of you tell us no. A man accused of killing his pregnant girlfriend and her brother is now accused of trying to kill a key witness. Deshaun Thomas is behind bars, but deputies say that didn't stop him from trying to silence his former roommate, who plans to testify against him in court. Julie Montanaro tells us what happened.
LaQuisha Herring and Sterling Connor were found shot to death in their Wolf Creek home in January 2011. Herring's boyfriend, Deshaun Thomas, is accused of pulling the trigger. Now, Thomas is accused of trying to arrange murder number 3 and have a key witness against him killed.
It could have happened at any time because the person that was supposed to be doing it was, in fact, had made bond and was out.
Yet the murder plot started coming unraveled right away. A tip led deputies to a fellow inmate. He claims Thomas asked him to kill Trenton Ross when he got out of jail. Once released, he proceeded to answer Thomas's calls from the jail. They were all recorded.
In one of the phone conversations recorded here at the jail, tells Thomas, we're going to get him gone. You're going to beat that trial. You're going to be out of here. You dig? And Thomas said, hell yeah.
Another inmate spoke up too and said Thomas passed him 6 handwritten letters while he was in isolation. Some of those letters were in gang code, deputies say, but outlined Thomas's plan to use a woman to lure Ross to his death and silence what gang members call a 999. A snitch.
It will clearly have an impact on the murder case.
Again, that was Julie Montanaro reporting. We also spoke to Thomas's lawyer. Greg Cummings says he is disappointed and fears this will delay Thomas's trial, which is scheduled for October 22nd. A high school band director is free on bond tonight. He's charged with sexually assaulting a student. 42-year-old Paul Gilbo, band director of Colquitt County High School, was arrested last Thursday. He's accused of having consensual sex with a 17-year-old student. Now school leaders are looking for someone new to lead the band. Gilbo is suspended with pay pending the outcome of the investigation. The November elections are a few short months away, but it's what one U.S. representative said that has politicians on both sides of the aisle up in arms.
From what I understand from doctors, that's really rare. If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
We've got that story and more just ahead.
I just ran out. I didn't turn around. I didn't look behind me. I just got out, and then there was a moment where my daughter tripped, and I just pulled her up, and I was just dragging her, and I was just thinking, we just got to get out. I just got to get out the doors.
That was one of the many people who were trapped inside the movie theater when a lone gunman showed up at a midnight showing of the new Batman movie. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Angelica Alvarez. That gunman was dressed in protective gear and a gas mask when he opened fire on a theater packed full of people. Tonight, 12 people are dead. Another almost 60 are injured. And at last check, 11 of those injured are in critical condition tonight. CBS's Teresa Garcia has the very latest.
Police removed the bodies of victims from the Century Theater in Aurora, Colorado. It remains an active crime scene almost 24 hours after an unthinkable rampage. The horror began a half hour into the midnight showing of the new Batman film. Witnesses say a man dressed in black body armor and a gas mask entered through an emergency exit and tossed canisters of tear gas or chemicals, then started shooting.
He points the gun right at my face. He's about 3 feet away from me with a gun in my face.
A young girl just with bullet wounds in her leg and blood just all over her is just... I don't ever want to see something like that again.
Police responded within 90 seconds, quickly arresting 24-year-old James Holmes in his car outside the theater. He told police they might find explosives in his nearby apartment. He was right.
It is a very vexing problem how to enter that apartment safely. I personally have never seen anything like what the pictures show us.
Authorities say Holmes set off loud music at midnight to draw police to his booby-trapped apartment just 4 miles away. Had they opened the door, the bombs would have drawn most of the police there and away from this theater. A former FBI profiler says such a well-planned attack is the work of a predator.
Based on his behavior and based on the planning that went into it, that he very likely is sitting back enjoying the impact of the crime.
Before Friday, Holmes' only brush with police was a speeding ticket. Teresa Garcia, CBS News, Aurora, Colorado.
Authorities say Holmes had his hair dyed like Batman's enemy, the Joker. The director of the film The Dark Knight Rises, which was playing in the theater when the shots rang out, calls the event unbearably savage. Holmes has his first court appearance scheduled for Monday. Now, we don't know yet if the shooting has impacted the opening day turnout in our area. The parking lot, though, at the Governor Square Theater in Tallahassee was nearly full by noon today. But as Eyewitness News reporter Lenitra Bennett tells us, there are some avid moviegoers who say they're skeptical.
Be safe. Tallahassee resident Steve Parker says some of his kids are too young to watch the latest Batman movie.
But I have older ones that they've been asking to go see it because they've seen the rest of them. So, now it makes you say no.
Parker says hearing about a gunman in Aurora, Colorado, opening fire in a midnight movie premiere of The Dark Knight Rises concerns him.
You want to make sure there's metal detectors there and there's people patting people down. Makes you want to stay at home and rent movies from home and not let your kids experience the same experience you had when you were a child.
I saw it on the news and I just couldn't believe it. Like, that was the first thing that was on the news and I was just like, no, there's no way that happened.
Authorities say 24-year-old James Holmes killed 12 people and injured 59 more. Reports say some moviegoers thought Holmes, who was dressed in all black and wore body armor, was a part of the show. Have you planned on going to see Batman?
Yeah, but I think I'm going to wait now. That's the type of thing scares me. I mean, I'd like to take my kids and stuff to see stuff like that, but not if I'm going to have that fear that something like that could happen.
Again, that was Lenitra Bennett reporting. Residents we spoke to say movie theaters should start thinking about putting metal detectors up and hiring around-the-clock security. But as we pointed out, both AMC and Regal Theaters in Tallahassee already have security on site. Today's tragic shooting throws the issue of gun control back into the spotlight. Colorado actually has some of the loosest gun laws in the country, even looser than Florida and Georgia statutes. For example, Colorado allows people to openly carry a gun without a permit. This is something Florida and Georgia have rules against. We talked to people on both sides of the gun control argument. Here's what they had to say.
I do think that it's important that the law are in place, but I don't think ban guns is the answer.
They still will. I mean, even the gun laws are more set for law-abiding citizens than they are for people who are going to get them one way or another.
I think it's way too easy to get guns in the state as far as illegal or legal, and we should do something about that to protect our citizens.
Everyone we spoke with that was in favor of stricter gun laws says this mass shooting was just like any other. They cited examples such as the shootings at Virginia Tech a few years ago and the one in Seattle just last week. Some say they're not optimistic that this shooting will make a difference when it comes to gun laws. Taking a closer look now into some of the amount of guns in general in the U.S. Some gun control groups say the U.S. not only has more guns than any other country, it has more per capita. Gun control groups say almost 1/3 of all the world's known guns are owned by Americans. They say there are actually more guns in the U.S. than adults. A Washington-based anti-gun lobby says those guns shoot more than 100,000 people a year. Let's take a look now at tonight's Voice Your Choice poll question results. Earlier we asked if Today's shooting at the movie theater in Colorado will keep you from going to the movies. 27% of you said yes, and 73% of you said no. The campaigns for President Obama and Mitt Romney are calling on Colorado television stations to stop airing some political ads. A Romney campaign spokeswoman says the Republicans' campaign is pulling all of its ads in the state, and the campaign press secretary for the president says they plan to suspend their ads as well. Earlier today, both released statements of sentiment for the victims of the theater shooting. Meantime, President Obama is wrapping up a two-day tour in Florida where the economy was a hot topic. Today, new numbers show Florida's unemployment rate held steady in June at 8.6%, but across the nation, the rates rose in 27 states. This is the highest number in almost a year. In our exclusive interview with President Obama yesterday, we asked the president about a new CBS New York Times poll about the economy.
Said 2/3 of registered voters believe that your policies have at least in part contributed to the sluggish economy, and maybe perhaps worse for your re-election bid, sir, is that over half of the independents who were polled said that they don't think your policies will ever help the recovery. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, these polls bounce back and forth. You know, I could probably find you 5 polls just from the last week that show us with a sizable lead. But the bottom line is there are a lot of folks that are still hurting here in Florida and all across the country. We've seen the unemployment rate drop by about 3% since the recession struck and the financial crisis struck. This is the worst crisis in our lifetimes, and what we've been able to do is to help to right the ship and start moving us in the right direction. 4.5 million new jobs, 500,000 new manufacturing jobs. The question now is who's going to keep us moving in the right direction. So Mr. Romney, for example, believes that we should continue to provide tax breaks for companies that are shipping jobs overseas. I think that we should provide tax breaks to companies that are investing here in the United States of America. Mr. Romney thinks that the way we grow the economy is to give $5 trillion of tax cuts, mostly going to some of the wealthiest Americans. And even if that means we're cutting investments in education or rebuilding our infrastructure or our investments in basic science and research or making Medicare a voucher system.
Nationally, the unemployment rate stayed the same at 8.2%. It's been stuck above 8% for 41 consecutive months. When President Obama took office, it was at 7.9%. As we just mentioned, Florida's unemployment rate stands at 8.6% for a second straight month, and the head of the Department of Economic Opportunity says 800,000 Floridians are without a job. Governor Rick Scott made job creation the centerpiece of his administration. He pledged to create 700,000 jobs in 7 years. State economists say the unemployment rate improved because people have left the workforce, not because they're finding jobs. But the governor argues that it's because of lower taxes and the elimination of burdensome business regulations. Let's take a look at unemployment numbers in Leon, Gadsden, and Wakulla counties, where we saw a slight increase. Leon County's rate is at 7.6%. Gadsden stands at 8.9%, and Wakulla now stands at 7.4%. A new poll shows citizens think the people running for local office are underqualified. 66% of responders to a Tallahassee Voices poll agree that not enough highly qualified candidates were running for local office. People thought the reasons for this include not wanting to subject their family to scrutiny and not wanting to raise money. One Leon County Commissioner says he feels everyone would benefit more if more people got involved in local politics. Well, coming up next, one of our own WCTV reporters gets tased by Tallahassee police.
1, 2.
He wasn't doing anything bad. He actually volunteered for this. We'll tell you why he did that after the break. But first, Mike has a preview of that weekend. Hey, Mike.
I think we should show that every night.
I
just
think
for
we
fun.
should.
Got teased. in the meantime, we had a little bit of rain out there, but we might have some fewer showers as we head toward the upcoming weekend. Maybe some hotter temperatures. I'll look at all of that.
All right, I don't plan on getting tased in sports. That's number one. FAMU learned what the rest of the conference thought of this year's football team. The Rattlers were a top 5 pick at MEAC Media Day, but where in the top 5 would they strike? It's coming up in sports.